Everyone has a plan until they get punched in the face. Mike Tyson. Welcome to EOS Weekly. There have been some interesting developments over the last month or so with regards to the landscape of the EOS ecosystem, with several new EOSIO chains being announced. And when you look at the landscape and how it's been changing lately, to some extent it's what we've been expecting all along. A rich ecosystem of EOSIO chains with a lot of experimenting going on. This is a good thing. But there's also something about the current landscape that is a bit surprising and might be construed as a bit concerning as well. And the concerning part is that the number of private EOSIO chains that have been spinning up lately is increasing, particularly for our most prominent and arguably most promising applications to date. It's not ideal that we have a trend like this starting before IBC is in place, and we'll explore this further throughout this episode. Looking at this private chain trend objectively, it calls into question whether the initial vision of EOS is still a valid one, or if maybe we should be embracing a slightly altered version of that vision. Before we get into this though, just to quickly mention that we are still waiting for Block.one's formal set of governance proposals, which we're expecting to be released any time now. We covered in last week's episode what we believe will be in Block.one's proposals, and we're excited to see how close or how far off we were with these predictions. But in the meantime, there is this important issue of CPU congestion and the trend towards private chains. So that's what we wanted to cover today. Let's start by giving a high-level overview of the new chains that have been recently announced, which includes a combination of both private EOSIO chains as well as some new public chains. And then we'll explain this potential mind shift that we mentioned earlier. So first of all, we have two new chains spinning up. One is a chain by Meet.One, and the other new chain is called Bazcore, or we're going to call it Baz for short, BOS. Now, these two new chains have been referring to themselves as sidechains, but according to our definition, these would officially be considered sister chains, not side chains. We call these sister chains because they have their own base tokens that they are using for voting and resource procurement, and they have their own footprint of block producers, a set of BPs which may or may not overlap with BPs on the mainnet and elsewhere. But because the set of BPs and the base tokens are unique to these chains, we'd consider these two new chains to be sister chains, just like how we've been calling Warbly, Telos, EOS Force, and EOS sister chains. We've been reserving the term side chains for a different type of thing. For side chains, we're going with the definition that the Bytemaster used in the Dawn 4.0 announcement, where his definition of a sidechain is when it's the same BPs on a mainnet spinning up a parallel instance of their chain for the specific purpose of horizontal scaling. With this definition, sidechains would use the same base token as the mainnet for that chain. For example, on the EOS mainnet, the same EOS tokens would be used to procure sidechain resources. On the Telos mainnet, the same Telos tokens would be used to procure the Telos sidechain resources. Now currently, the IBC, inter-blockchain communication, that is needed to spin up a few sidechains like this is not developed yet. So there are no EOS sidechains yet. There are only sister chains. The Meet.One chain is being created primarily to address CPU and RAM becoming unaffordable on the EOS mainnet. And so Meet.One is launching this sister chain with resources priced in their Meet.One token. What's driving this is that the EOS mainnet has been having some congestion issues, which ends up resulting in affordability issues as well, being that dApps might need to increase their EOS token ownership in order to ensure they get enough processing power to run their application. And Meet.One is responding to this performance bottleneck on the EOS mainnet by spinning up a new public chain. Meet.One is coordinating activities with some prominent BPs that you can see here. BPs who have infrastructure available to create a nice, new, uncongested, affordable chain for the dApp builders. Bazcore is coming into existence for similar reasons. Like Meet.One, Bazcore has noted the CPU and RAM congestion issues that the EOS mainnet is experiencing. as you can see here in the Bazcore white paper. But Baz is more of an experimental chain when compared with Meet.One, in that Baz is trying out some new approaches, particularly with regards to the consensus algorithm. We'll do a deep dive into the Bazcore enhancements in a future episode. Some of their changes do look promising. Also, like the Meet.One chain, Bazcore has a high caliber set of block producers involved in the project. So both of these new public chains appear to be something to take seriously. Another new chain is the Everipedia chain. Everpedia has their own IQ token, and they plan to use the IQ token for managing resource procurement on their new private chain. The Everpedia dApp itself will run on this new chain, along with some other new dApps that Everpedia is building. They're working on some exciting stuff, a prediction market kind of like an Augur, and also an Oracle service. Now, EvaCoop, the ride-sharing dApp, is currently running on their own private EOSIO chain here as well. Eva does have a desire to make the leap over to run on the EOS Mainnet, but they need to work on optimizing their CPU and RAM usage first, before they'll be able to justify doing it, due to the cost involved with running an application of their size on the EOS Mainnet. EOSBet is in sort of an opposite position as EVA. EOSBet is currently on the EOS Mainnet today, but they want to get off of it. And they cite CPU congestion issues as their reason for exploring other options as well. Those options include things such as migrating over to one of the sister chains, or running their own private chain, just like what EVA and Everipedia are doing. And when you take a step back for a second and take this all in holistically, and consider the fact that Ono, Wax, the Worldwide Asset Exchange, and EOS Finex all went in the direction of private chains as well, and consider the reasoning behind these two new sister chains that are popping up, you start to get a much different picture of what EOS looks like today when compared to how we might have envisioned it looking, say, a year ago before we had anything concrete to look at. Before the EOS Mainnet launch, most of us thought it would look more like this, where there was one main EOS blockchain that was so massively powerful that pretty much the entire world could operate on top of this one main chain. And yes, we did have this horizontal scaling plan of sidechains, where we could double or triple the processing power of our EOS Mainnet as needed. But the general assumption was that there wasn't a huge rush on this. Horizontal scaling wouldn't be needed for a while. The one main EOS chain would be so incredibly powerful so as to easily support a wide spectrum of the early adopter applications. There would be plenty of time to build out this IBC thing for the horizontal scaling. It would be ready by the time we needed it, right? Wrong. The reality of what we've gotten is much different, where it's unfortunate to say this, but the EOS Mainnet today looks a bit more like a sandbox. It's a chain that might be able to handle a few hundred small to medium-sized applications. But once any of those applications reach a certain critical mass, they're likely going to have to jump ship and go over to a less expensive sister chain, or they could go the route of spinning up their own private EOSIO chain. At least this is the behavior we're seeing so far in these real-world examples with these, arguably our most prominent EOSIO applications to date. Now, to their credit, Block.one has been rolling out performance enhancements, some of which have doubled CPU performance. And Dan Larimer has been making suggestions as to how smart contracts can be optimized. But these types of performance improvements only go so far. Will we ever be able to run something the size of Facebook, Visa, and the NASDAQ simultaneously on top of a single EOS Mainnet chain? The answer to that should be obvious by now. It's a resounding no. At least not anytime soon. The early vision that we had of EOS, the vision of it as this one main chain with a few side chains on either side of it, serving as the global internet upgrade and supporting a new version of the financial system, social networking systems, healthcare and insurance systems, All these industries migrating over to run on top of this single all-powerful EOS chain. This vision needs to be adjusted. What's needed right now is a mindset shift. Instead of holding on for dear life to the one chain with a few side chains supporting the whole world vision, we need to start thinking in terms of one app, one chain, or even one app, multiple chain. In the revised modern-day EOS vision, it will be common for dApps to start out on a mainnet on one of these public chains here, while they build, test things out, make sure they have a product market fit, and so on. But once they reach a certain level of success, a certain critical mass, at that point they'll graduate to their own sidechain. It would be naive of us, the EOS community, to look at some of our most prominent and promising set of EOS-based applications to date and think it's an aberration that they're all running on their own chains. This is no aberration, and this is no coincidence either. It's no coincidence that all of our most prominent apps have gone in this direction. What you're seeing here, without a doubt, is the beginning of a trend. And some of these apps will even take it a step further. The really successful applications will need to spin up a second or a third EOSIO chain under the same application. In this way, the initial vision has been completely turned on its head. Now, if we want to ensure EOS continues to be a success and continues to dominate the third-gen blockchain realm, there's a few things we need to focus on right now. First, that sidechain enabling version of IBC that we discussed earlier. This needs to be the absolute top priority. Because none of these applications here, none of them want to go through the arduous process of recruiting their own BPs from around the world and attempt to spin up their own decentralized governed DPoS blockchain. The dApps would much rather commission a set of BPs that already have a community behind them, a set of BPs that are already running one of these public chains, and have them push a button to spin up a private instance of EOSIO for them. This is the future that we need to be working towards. The sidechain enabling version of IBC is on Block.one's roadmap, but we haven't gotten an update from Block.one on the progress or the timeline of this anytime recently. It seems they are more focused on building dApps at the moment. So the question is, why? Why is Block.one not more worried here? Surely they're seeing what we're seeing. Surely they're seeing the trend here, where any application with a decent amount of traction has been running into CPU and affordability issues and leaving the public chain to go off and launch their own private chains. So why hasn't Block.one reprioritized its backlog? Why have we heard more about UBI over the past several months than we have about IBC? Why have they not bumped sidechain enabling IBC to the very tippy top of the list? We don't have an answer for this. If Block.one were to deploy a mass adoption type of app, an app that will potentially go viral, if they were to deploy something like that on top of the EOS Mainnet, utilizing some or all of their 10% EOS token supply to procure network resources, this will only exacerbate the current congestion and affordability issues that applications like EOSBet are experiencing. And it would likely price a lot of the existing players out of the game. We know that Block.one is targeting a Q1 launch of their first application. So what's going to be super interesting to watch here is how they go about deploying it. They will likely want to play it safe and deploy on their own private EOSIO chain. Otherwise, like we just explained, they risk crowding out the existing dApps that are running on the EOS mainnet today. This is going to be a politically sensitive issue, and if they do announce launching their app on a private Block.one chain, like we believe they will, it will trigger a backlash from the token holders. Because most token holders have not shifted their mindset over to the new reality yet. And mindset shifts like this take time. It won't happen by the end of Q1. So here's a prediction for you. When Block.one goes to announce their new product, they'll announce that it'll be launched on a private Block.one chain managed by elected BPs, but then in nearly the same breath, they'll clarify future plans to connect this private chain of theirs with the EOS mainnet through IBC. And when they do this, they'll probably bend the truth a little bit by making it sound like this sidechain enabling version of IBC is right around the corner. That's it for this week's episode. Thanks for watching. Please like and subscribe if you learned something here today, or if there's something we got wrong, let us know in the comments below. Thanks, and we'll see you next week right here on EOS Weekly.
Do you have a dream, George?
Well, I would if I could get some fucking sleep.
You have a dream. And maybe you will accomplish it. But yet you failed. Why?
Because I got caught.
No, manito. You failed because you had the wrong dream.